a scene reminiscent of what we've become accustomed to in the Middle East. Bomb camera footage depicting a U.S. airstrike on a large boat of drugs coming out of Venezuela spread like wildfire across the internet. Retired A-10 Warthog Air Force pilot Dale Stark said of that video that President Trump, quote, saved more American lives with that airstrike against Venezuelan cartels than any other airstrike he's done in Iraq, any other airstrike in Iraq ever did. Of course, he's right, but this isn't really just about stopping the flows of illicit drugs and human trafficking, which are very serious, out of Venezuela into the United States. Now, I told you right here on this show months ago, that investigations of election fraud in the United States would lead to Venezuela. Now, Nicolas Maduro admits publicly, he said publicly, that he's a puppet of China and gets special gifts, such as supposedly unhackable Huawei phones. The drug cartels and Maduro work with China to destroy the United States via election fraud in part, who they consider their great enemy. Hence why the USS Iwo Jima, 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and a Los Angeles-class nuclear-powered submarine, and nearly 5,000 Marines and sailors are sitting off the coast of Venezuela. We're now joined by our very own Mike Lindell. He's the CEO of MyPillow and CEO of Lindell TV, the founder of our network, to discuss further, because as you can see, he's sitting outside of that White House and he has very important meetings inside the doors today. Look, people keep asking when Trump is going to take action, and I think a lot of people don't understand what's going on in Venezuela because they don't understand how it ties to the voting machines and what they've been doing in this country for decades. Drug trafficking, money laundering, and human trafficking rely on rigged elections. And so this is a big statement from President Trump. He's also talking about mail-in ballots. So tell us what you expect to see in the near future, as much as you can. We understand some things you have to keep close to the vest. But what will we see soon, Mike?
Right. Well, I'm going to be talking to him today. We usually always cover all the election platforms. Remember, we're 4.5 years. My teams are ahead of everybody. You know, Emerald, you talk about Venezuela. You go back to January of 21, and by then I was out in the news everywhere. I was being attacked everywhere. I'm going with the machines, the stolen election, and the Venezuela underground. I talked to them many times, hundreds of them by Zoom, and they had tears, crying, going, "Please don't give up, don't give up." Our country was taken by their elections, their stolen elections with the electronic voting machines in early 2000s, and they just told me a lot of them said we were praying that the U.S. would get their eyes opened up to how corrupt these devices are, that you can use them to steal whole countries like Venezuela, and all the stuff. If you remember, Emerald, all the stuff with going back to the Sidney Powells and everything, it was all tying back to Venezuela and Smartmatic and Dominion. But let's not forget, all machines are created equal. They're all got to go, including ES&S, the big one out of Omaha, Nebraska. In fact, at my trial, my lawyer said, you know, Mike's an equal opportunity voting machine basher. They all have to go. This is what we're praying. Our president will put out some kind of executive orders here that I believe they're working on. Or maybe even declare a national emergency. I wish you'd just do that. Declare a national emergency. Remember, Emerald, they deemed our election platforms critical infrastructure, our elections. I think Obama did that. Well, that opened the door to where we're at now. And you know what? Critical infrastructure, when you have all the stuff that we have, the evidence of every single stolen elections and computer manipulated elections, all the way down to the smallest tickets. Remember, everybody, we had 1/3 of the cast vote records from 2020 and 1/5 of the United States from 2022. Every single one of them in 2020 of all the counties we got, which was over 1,000, were computer manipulated. Now, that doesn't show that they were flipped, just that they were computer manipulated. So I'm very excited. Another thing that ties into what you're talking about is, and you're going to hear a lot more about this on Lindell TV, is what we have something that's been brought to me months ago that's going to really help solve the fentanyl crisis in our country. it's for sure going to help in ways you can't even imagine. And how do I know all this? This is another part that I'm kind of an expert in, being an crack cocaine addict and an ex-addict. And remember, when I came out of addiction, everybody, I spent all my time trying to get other addicts and help places like Teen Challenge, Salvation Army, Union Gospel, most of this in Minnesota, but around the country too. And um, what's happened, since these tied together. I remember my first conversation with the president, but I didn't think politics even mattered. This is August 15th of 2016. By a divine appointment, I met our great president, Donald Trump. He was just the candidate then. And I remember the first thing I said, they said, Mike, whatever you do, don't tell him you were an addict. And I went in there and I said, I said, Mr. Trump, I said, I was a crack cocaine addict. And I kind of looked at him like this. And the first thing we talked about was, I said, I'm going to have what's called the Lindell Recovery Network.org. It's going to help millions of people off addiction into Jesus. And he said, and I'm going to shut down that border and stop the drugs pouring in from our southern border. And we just had this amazing conversation that I've never forgot in 2016. Now, Emerald, one of the things, too, I want to bring up real quick is, right now, everybody, that Lindell Recovery Network.org came to fruition, and we are under the biggest attack ever right now by the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison. And these are other things too, Emerald, that I always bring up to the president, is our blockers that are out there. I call them blockers, everybody. I've called them worse names. I've called people traitors, everything else. You all know that, which I believe they are when they're doing blocking. And you have people like the Secretary of State of Alabama right now, the Secretary of State of Louisiana, the Kim Hammers from Arkansas, the governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee. These people are blocking our efforts to get to paper ballots hand counted. And you got to ask yourself, why are they doing this, everybody? Well, you know what? They're going to be called out, I believe, in these coming months as the president puts his plan forward to secure our elections before the midterms. And that's before the primaries, everybody. Remember, I'm thinking of running for governor in Minnesota. And one of the things, I don't want everything to be in vain out there. People put in all these efforts to run, and then to have these primaries stolen, or these midterms taken from us, which we would lose our country.
I'm glad you brought it up. So the mail-in ballots are not just in blue states. People need to understand that. We're actually have a full segment on that a little bit later in the show. I also want to touch on something you just said, because this is really important. And you know what? I came to that realization about 2 weeks ago. I was going back through my notes because I'm prepping all this stuff, as we know that action is going to be taken very soon. And I was looking at Venezuela and Smartmatic and what we'd actually said in 2020, like December of 2020 and November of 2020, Mike. Like you said, we had probably 90% of it. I didn't realize that all along until I started looking back at my notes and my posts on social media and what other people had said, like yourself, like Sidney Powell. For the most part, they just found these tiny little technicalities that they used, right? That they tried to discredit everything we were saying, but it was well documented. It gives me chills, actually. It gave me chills because I saw how over target, and it explained why people like you and I were hit so hard, and why it was so important to take away our voices and cancel us, because we were pretty close to the full truth 5 years ago. So it's very interesting to see this all come into fruition.
Right, but Emerald, and I've said this before, you guys can watch it on Lindell TV, how we got here. That speech I gave 2 years ago, so it's the only one where I used a teleprompter. The president let me use his teleprompter, and it was so important. In that speech, everybody, it says, hey, you look back and say, wow, just thinking back then it was so devastating as they kept suppressing the truth, and we're all just going, oh no, now they stole the election and Biden's in, and I've said it before, the miracle here is, everybody, that it didn't get turned over that back then. They were their own worst enemy. Evil was that they held it down enough to have the last 4.5 years happen, because we needed those last 4.5 years in more ways than you can ever imagine. People's eyes got open. People came to the Lord. People came to all these bad things going on. You look back and they're actually meant to be. God had a plan, and we're living that plan. We're living. He's given us grace for such a time as this. I'm excited now to see it all, like you say, all coming out, and it's all going to come out. Yes, we were 100% right back then, but they were very good. They had a plan. They went into the biggest panic ever, it was like whack-a-mole for them. This guy pops up, boom, you're done. But that people stayed the course and kept courageous and kept going. And courage is contagious. More and more people got on board, but we owe a lot to that great man in this White House that he stayed the course, and God working through him, he's getting things done faster and better than anyone in history. But we can't let it be in vain, everybody. We've got to get rid of the machines, go to paper ballots and count it like every other country in the world has, 132 of them.
I love what you said about people, their eyes being opened. I had so many friends from college call me who said, you're the only Christian person I knew, and it's like spontaneous conversions, right? So that's something we should do a full segment on one day, because there was a lot of people who came to the Lord through everything we've been through, these trials and tribulations of the country over the last few years. So it is clearly God's plan. I do want to talk about the mail-in ballots, because this is what Trump has said yesterday when he was talking about Space Force. We did not expect the conversation to include mail-in ballots, but when you said everything ties together, it does. He said basically part of moving Space Force to Alabama is because Colorado has this universal mail-in ballot system. Let's take a listen to the president in that office yesterday. Listen.
I will say I want to thank Colorado. The problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do mail-in voting. They went to all mail-in voting. So they have automatically crooked elections, and we can't have that. When a state is for mail-in voting, that means they want dishonest elections, because that's what that means. So that played a big factor also.
But it's not just Colorado. Will this put pressure on red states that also...
Yeah, it's like the irony there. Colorado went to all mail-in ballots like your Utahs and your Oregons and stuff. That they in Oregon, I talk to people all the time. They're in tears. Mike, can we ever get back to normal? No, some kind of normal elections. I said, absolutely. There's places that are the worst of the worst. Just because Colorado is the tip of the spear for right out in the open how corrupt they are when they put a Gold Star mom, grandma, 7 years old, in prison for 9 years, and you have one of the crookedest Secretary of States and people that ever walked the planet, Jenna Griswold, and what she did to all of our elections when she deleted the 2020 election. But like Emerald said, you move to Alabama, and the president's saying this about Colorado. Well, in Alabama, the Secretary of State there I just got a report of this 2 days ago, buying more machines when the president has ordered, hey, we're going to get rid of them. We're going to go to paper ballots. He said this order's coming out, and even the one he had, these machines are in violation. But Emerald, the word has it that in Alabama, let's just say there was no corruption with machines. You're supposed to do your shopping and take the one that's the best, that saves the most money, the lowest bidder, so to speak. Well, the rumor has it, and we haven't validated this yet, but I don't care. I think I'm getting it from a very reliable source, that they bought ES&S machines even though they were the highest price. Now, that's weird. I mean, that is strange if you're supposed to buy them based on low price, and you just made a deal with the biggest voting machine company in the United States. I got a big problem with that Secretary of State, and so does everybody in the state of Alabama that knows about this. So that's going to be coming up too as we report these blockers and these, I just call them blockers, these uniparty Republicans that block. We shouldn't be having problems in Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri. We shouldn't be. South Dakota. I'm just, this
Louisiana.
is the biggest thing, Emerald, that has. Yeah, Louisiana. There's a big one right there. I worked with the Attorney General down there. He's a good friend of mine, Jeff Landry, who's now the governor, and he's ghosting me. I'm reaching out to him going, your Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, by the way, no relation, is sitting down there bidding him, going to buy all these hundreds of millions of dollars worth of machines. I'm sorry, Governor Landry and Governor and Secretary of State Landry. We got a big problem with that, and so does all my teams on the ground. And guess who I'm going to be letting know all this. This is the stuff that our president needs to know. Who's out there? These red states and governors that are blocking what his agenda to get it done. This is for all people, to help all people, and we can't have that this time around, Emerald. This is too big. We get one shot at this, everybody, this time in history. If these machines and computers and mail-in voting are here and they steal the House or whatever, it's over. All this stuff will be in vain. They'll say, oh, those guys fought hard, then they back up, or we turned into a socialist communist country and we lost the world. We know God wins in the end, but we all have to do our part too.
Exactly. He doesn't expect us to sit idly by and let it be taken. And look, we know that as Trump does more in regards to our elections, more of the rats will scurry. They'll come out of the holes, right? And you'll see a lot of the Republicans who are really not for reforming our elections, and people are going to find out a lot about how our political system has been working. And President Trump will tell you, I think he'll probably say publicly, I know this personally, from sources all around him, they tried to tell him all through these 4 years leading up to the 2024 election that he was wrong. All these Republican consultants, all these members of Congress, many of them, not all, there are a couple who deserve Medal of Freedom. They're basically just doing their jobs, but there's a couple key members of Congress, but not many. I mean, maybe one or two.
Right.
But everybody else told him, you're wrong. These people are crazy. People like Mike Lindell, like Patrick Byrne, like Emerald Robinson, they're crazy. They're totally wrong. He now knows completely the truth. I know he does. And so we'll see more of these rats coming out. Mike, real quick, a couple other topics before we run out.
Okay, I want to quick say that, you guys, our great president, when we became great friends in the spring of 21, he never wavered. When he knew it was stolen, and he's never wavered. You're right, Emerald. All these people saying, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And he said, no, I'm right. And if he even said it, you know what? If it wasn't stolen, I would have been okay with it, but I'm not okay with it, because it can never happen again in history. And God bless him for never, ever backing down and even wavering in any way, saying, well, maybe we could, half do machines or half do this. No, he's going to get it all done. I really believe that.
Real quick, I have two other not related but non-related questions. Your phone is back. You shared that on the Span Room yesterday, breaking news that the FBI, I've been saying we're still not a free country because Mike Lindell does not have his phone back. Well, now Mike Lindell has his phone back. How did that happen? When did you get it?
It just came yesterday from the FBI. I haven't been to Minnesota yet. I'm going there tomorrow. And I'm going to, right on my show, I think tomorrow or Friday, we'll open it all together and see. I want to show you the pictures that when my dad died, that I didn't have my grandkids. It's been 3 years now. And I'm going to take people back at what they did that fateful day in September of 22 at a Hardee's drive-thru in 12:30 in broad daylight. Emerald, I think back of this, if it would have happened at night, what happened there, I would have busted through them. They didn't look like your typical FBI with sunglasses and black sedans. No, you would have thought they were bad guys, which I thought they were. I would have bashed between them, took off to go find a real cop, and they probably would have shot at me. Who knows? Because I don't understand what they did, and we're going to revisit all that. 3 years later, nothing to see here. They could have took a download. I would have gave it to them. But I did want to be arrested. There is that. I was very stubborn at that drive-thru. I want to be arrested because I wanted to go on Fox and tell the world about these corrupt voting machines.
It's fine. Every time I drive by Hardee's now, which I do pretty regularly where I live, I think about that. And I imagine you being in that drive-thru and happening. I mean, and then one of our mutual friends said, oh, it must have been the biscuits, right? Hardee's biscuits. And then you got canceled. You've been canceled by multiple big box stores. There might be some hope. A different person has taken over Bed Bath & Beyond. They're going to reopen storefronts because they went out of business after they canceled you.
Right.
Will MyPillow be back in Bed Bath & Beyond? And should our audience request it? I would love to be able to just go down the street and pick it up when I travel and I forget my MyPillow. It'd be great. I could just pop into a Bed Bath & Beyond and get my MyPillow.
Yeah, we're praying for that. And in all fairness, I was reached out for a meeting with them. So we just pray that we can get back my employees and my company. They did nothing wrong. And I'd like to see, as I move here, and I'm by the way, everybody, I'm finding out if I do run for governor, what I can and can't do back with my pillow. But that's a strong brand. The products are the best products in history. And by the way, you can use the promo code TRUTH, everybody. Use that to support my employees and everything. And guys, to have them back would be an amazing gateway to get back these retailers. A lot of them did it in fear, Emerald. They didn't know. We were at a time in history, and I'm a forgiving person. I forgive. God forgave me for what I've done, and I forgive these retailers what they did. They didn't know. They were scared. We were an anomaly in history, and they had all these bots and trolls attacking them. Then they find out that the real people boycotted them right when they did that. They go, oh, man, this is, now I think it's fear because none of them have let us back in. You guys, horrible Costco, all these guys, none of them have let us back in. So maybe Bed Bath, we pray that will be the gateway.
Yeah, continue sending prayers up, but also put pressure on publicly. That doesn't hurt either. Thank you so much, Mike Lindell. I can't wait to hear the results of your meeting with President Trump today.
Thanks, Emerald. Thank you, everybody.
All right, we're going to take a very quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with more Absolute Truth after this commercial break.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Real quick, we are very pleased because after a period of intense concerns from the MAHA Coalition about RFK's tenure as Health and Human Services Secretary, it looks like RFK Jr. is taking action, bold, necessary action, purging the medical deep state of key players in the COVID-19 conspiracy and the subsequent unconstitutional vaccine mandates. People like Dr. Paul Offit are out after years of avoiding his comeuppance for his dastardly role in the COVID conspiracy against the American people. And now even President Trump himself seems to be rethinking his previous support for the vaccines during Operation Warp Speed, as we told you yesterday. President Trump did say this on Truth Social, saying, quote, "It is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think they are a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree," like this person right here. With CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer and I want it now. I've been shown information from Pfizer and others that is extraordinary, but they never seem to show the public the results. Why not? They go off to the next hunt and let everyone rip themselves apart, including Bobby Kennedy Jr. and CDC, trying to figure out the success or failure of the drug company's COVID work. They show me great numbers and results, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. So are we finally turning the corner, or is this just another one step forward, two step, three steps back dance? Join us now to walk us through the recent changes made by RFK is none other than the renowned biotech analyst and author of the Kingston Report Substack, Karen Kingston. Karen, it's good to see you. I said yesterday, has the Overton window shifted? Ed Dow certainly thinks so. There's no, and a former HHS senior advisor, Gray Delaney, called this seismic. He just got pushed out of the bureaucracy for taking a strong stance for the MAGA coalition. He says this is huge. What say you?
Yeah, this is going to lead to a watershed moment for mRNA. It is going to determine the future use of mRNA technology, what's going to happen with the CDC over the next few weeks. And we all know that Secretary Kennedy is going to be testifying tomorrow in front of the Senate and Cassidy to also address this. So I think that Donald President Donald Trump is probably getting some pressure from individuals that are pro mRNA within the administration, and that's why he put that truth out there, saying, I've seen good data, and RFK Jr., Secretary Kennedy, and others have shown me other data. We all know you can walk into pretty much any room, any church basement today, and ask someone if they know someone who's died from or had a serious complication after receiving a COVID-19 MR injection, and you're going to see hands going up. So the elephant's in the room, and it's good to see that President Trump is willing to shift his mindset and willing to look at evidence. And some people are saying, well, why is he calling on Pfizer to present evidence and the biopharma companies? I think that's a wise move. Last time Pfizer was forced to show their data, it didn't work out well, Emerald. I mean, we remember they wanted to keep the data hidden for 85 years. Many of the reports that were released, they had the one report that showed nearly 5 million harmful effects across 1.5 million people just over an 18-month period. And those were just the phone calls and emails into Pfizer, So I think that this is going to be going to result in a very positive outcome. And as you and I spoke last week, what RFK Jr. did at the CDC and within HHS is he really did out these individuals that have this global public health mindset. And Dr. Daskalakis, Mr. Monkeypox Czar, he went on a media tour on many mainstream large platforms on like MSNBC. And you know what he was saying? He goes, we've never debriefed RFK Jr. about preventable infectious diseases, vaccine preventable infectious diseases. We don't know where he's getting his information from. Secretary Kennedy has said that the mRNA vaccines are the most deadly vaccines in history. Now, at this point, I would say all publicity is good publicity. Half of America never heard RFK Jr. make those statements. And now those who are pro AI, pro mRNA, pro these pandemic responses are going on platforms and repeating what RFK Jr. is saying. And you have to keep in mind, even though it's 2025 for us, for those that have been injected, it's 2021, and they are raising their eyebrows and they're looking for alternative opinions right now because they know someone who was injured or they were injured themselves.
Yeah, they do. And I talked to Dr. Zhivjets yesterday about a study he did with Dr. Paul Merrick and others, and it shows just absolutely staggering adverse effects. And the data is so damning. I said that's what the data that Trump needs to see. Now that he's finally talking about it, and I do believe that the pharma companies probably did give him data that says, oh, look how amazing this is. We did this. You did this, playing the flattery card. You did this. But it seems like someone is getting through to him to say, hey, look, and I have said this, if he doesn't address it, it will be the biggest stain on his legacy. And he's very much someone who cares about his legacy, and rightly so. He's done so much good. But if this is not addressed, it could overshadow all the good that he has done and is currently doing.
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere to hide. Again, I think Secretary Kennedy's done a great job at reorganizing HHS, the CDC, and the FDA. I think that's why, he put Jim O'Neill temporarily in charge of the CDC because he said there's still more rooting out that we've got to do. And I don't think Pfizer's going to get away with showing their cherry-picked data. As you said, Emerald, I wrote an article about this years ago. Cherry-picking data is when you just select favorable data to show to the public, to submit to the FDA. And it's as common in the biopharma industry as speeding is on the 405, here in Southern California. So I think I actually heard Dr. Robert Malone last week, I believe he was on with Del Bigtree, and he said, look, we're not going to allow the pharma companies, they submit data to the FDA, and we're not going to allow that their contract research organization, those people that are on their payroll, the doctors that are doing these trials, they're on their payroll, they're contracted. We're not going to allow them to say, hey, if someone died after receiving a procedure or an injection, and the doctor who's being paid by the biopharma company says, oh, it wasn't caused by the shots. We're going to say, we want to see those health records, right? We're not going to let them say, okay, here we've got 10 babies. They all had seizures and fevers after being injected, but it wasn't caused by the injections. And Dr. Mullen's saying, no, we're going to ask for those health records, and we're going to, give a second opinion. So I don't think they're going to let them off the hook. I haven't seen any indication. I mean, it seems like they're putting RFK Jr. is truly coming forward and delivering on his promise for transparency throughout all the agencies at HHS and transparency regarding these vaccine agendas.
Well, at the very least, you see he's finally purged the CDC of Mr. Monkeypox, who is walking right there. You might not recognize him because he actually has clothes on. But yeah, at least he's done that. I think September, Dr. Robert Malone, who's on the ACIP board, they're meeting in a couple weeks, has told us that September is going to be a very big month. It's already kicking off with a bang, especially with Trump's statement. So I think we have lots to watch out for. This is a great start. Great start to September. Karen Kingston, thank you so much for keeping us abreast of all the developments. And of course, you can stay tuned with all of those in detail that no one else offers by going to Karen's Substack at the Kingston Report on Substack. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Emerald. God bless.
Bye. Happening right now, the Fulton County, Georgia Board of Commissioners are meeting as we speak to once again vote for or against following judges' orders to appoint Republican board members to the Board of Elections. Those board members are Julie Adams, a friend of the show, as well as Jason Frazier, another friend of the show. The Democrat county commissioners continue to defy a court order to appoint the two Republican board members, despite a senior judge, David Emerson's recent ruling that included a $10,000 a day fine to the board for noncompliance. The Democrat members just do what Dems do, and they continue to go judge shopping. So last week, a Georgia court, a lower court, issued a stay and an appeal from the Fulton County BOC, the Board of Commissioners, in its contempt decision until the appellate court hears it or declines to. And even though the Georgia Supreme Court has already ruled that the BOC must seat the Republican appointees, but like I said, of course, Democrat board members don't think they have to adhere to the court's orders because, let's be honest, they usually don't have to, it seems, in our banana republic. Listen to this deranged Democrat board member just last week.
Everyone, it is the Fulton County Board of Commission meeting day, and we have a couple really important agenda items that I want to make you aware of. First of all, we will be having an emergency add-on to our agenda to respond to the judge's order that we as a board appoint the election deniers, Jason Frazier and Julie Adams. Unfortunately, the court has ruled against us, which I think is the wrong ruling. We've tried to get a stay from the Court of Appeals. That was denied. And so we will likely have to take this up today. And our elections are under attack in this country. We're seeing it obviously in Texas. We're seeing it all over the country in different ways. And now they're talking about taking away mail-in ballots and electronic voting. And this is just another arena in which they are trying to chip away at free and fair elections and our right to vote and our right to have a democracy. And so, despite the judge's orders, I will never support putting two election deniers on our Board of Registration and Elections, not with my vote. I have free will, and I will not do it ever.
We'll see how the board votes today, and we'll update you on this developing story tomorrow. In the meantime, in Arizona, public records show Maricopa County is moving to permanently delete senior staff emails from the years 2020 and 2022 related to elections, defying the DOJ civil rights investigations that are ongoing. The recorder's office just sent a letter to Maricopa County Manager Prikorsky identifying the pending actions by the head of their elections IT department that violate Arizona law and county policy, and they're requesting that the county preserve the records as they should, according to the law. Now, this is obvious disregard for the transparency that they say that they always adhere to. And it looks like a cover-up of election irregularities. Remember that Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers is also asking the Trump administration to do a full review of election systems in her state, but also there's these ongoing DOJ and Trump administration probes into 2020 that obviously Maricopa County is concerned about. And with Trump taking aim at mail-in ballots, parallel election co-author Leah Hoops in Pennsylvania knows it's not just Democrat-led states that do automatic mail-in voting. It's also several red states like Utah, which we discussed with Mike Lindell a little bit earlier. And Leah joins us now. Leah, it's good to see you. I see you also took a little jab at Pressler there because obviously, you know, he says he fights so hard for Trump, but Trump doesn't want mail-in ballots either.
Exactly. That's that is the irony in all of this. I've been going after Pressler for years and his exploiting of a corrupted mail-in ballot system and convincing people if we just throw money at the situation to his early vote pack, which we don't even have in Pennsylvania, that he will help to win in certain states. So, of course, I got to point out the hypocrisy and the exploitation of the mail-in ballot system.
So tell us what you think of Trump's actions. And I know that any DOJ investigation, particularly in Pennsylvania, your witness testimony would be very instrumental. Have you heard of any probe from the DOJ into Pennsylvania? I know that they've told several states to preserve their records, but I don't think Pennsylvania is one of those yet, correct?
Actually, Pennsylvania is one of those, and Shapiro has been out there. Oh, yes. Shapiro, the criminal himself, our governor, our installed governor, actually has already said that he doesn't even cooperate with with anything that's going on with the federal government. And he's been fighting President Trump in court for the green energy scam, federal dollars. He's been fighting against, so-called abortion laws. And so, I mean, for years, he's been fighting President Trump. And now, of course, they don't want them to have access to any of the voter rolls, or they don't want them to have any information about our voting systems, and so on and so on. So it's already a battle because Shapiro is implicated in the 2020 election fraud, and that is one of the big reasons why he's fighting President Trump so hard. And I have all the evidence against him.
Mail-in ballots make a huge difference in Pennsylvania because that was a major difference for 2024. There were 700,000 less mail-in ballots in the state of Pennsylvania as opposed to 2020, correct?
That is correct. And the hardest part of it is when you compare the numbers, the in-person vote, and thank God people like myself and other great patriots actually encouraged people to vote in person, because that is what made the difference in Pennsylvania in 2024. We do not have early voting in Pennsylvania. It's an on-demand mail-in ballot. And for people like myself who have sacrificed everything, and there are other people, obviously we talked about Tina Peters just earlier, and anyone that was in a political gulag who was protesting against the stolen election. It's insulting, and to me, it's a psyop when you have people like Pressler coming into my state and, telling people, there might be a black swan event on election day, and make sure that you get your mail-in ballot, when it's people like us that have been fighting these mail-in ballots and President Trump. So he's completely going against what the president is saying. And it is actually hurting our elections, because if you see on my post, in the whistleblower videos, the end goal and the long war for Pennsylvania is for the communists to capture Pennsylvania with mail-in voting, like they have in Colorado, like they have in Oregon, just like Mike Lindell just spoke about. That is the end game for Pennsylvania, and they are getting very close to it, Emerald. Just right now, Delaware County, which we caught in 2020 stealing the election, is actually consolidating 100 precincts as we speak. So it makes no sense to me. So you're going to encourage people because we need to, if you can't beat them, join them. We just need to do what they do and use their strategy until we can change the laws. It's the dumbest strategy I've ever heard. And that would never work in warfare. The more you push and encourage people to use mail-in voting, and it's something that becomes very easy to them, they're going to take away the ability to vote in person. That's what they did, 2 decades ago in Colorado, in Oregon. That's exactly what the plan is right now for Pennsylvania. And if we continue to push down this road, Pennsylvania will be lost to the communists.
It absolutely will. And as goes Pennsylvania, will go the rest of the country. Let's be honest. I want to touch on what you just said, because you noted the sacrifice that people like you and most especially people like Tina Peters, who is sitting in a Colorado prison as we speak, have made. And that brings me to an open letter that you posted to your Twitter, and I was very moved by it, Leah. And that's actually why I asked you to join us again, though I love to get the updates from Pennsylvania. So I thought it was very important. You said, "My fellow Americans, my heart aches as I write this, for I, along with countless others across our great nation, have been abandoned, cast aside after bearing witness to the election fraud that stained the 2020 election. We stood in the gap, risking everything to defend the sacred principles of the republic, yet our cries for justice remain unanswered. In courtrooms, we continue to fight, not just for our own rights, but for yours, for the soul of this nation. Our rights have been trampled, lives have been lost, and families torn apart, all because we dared to tell the truth." You go on to speak about what's going on, and you say, "This is not just a betrayal, it is a deliberate, calculated move toward a communist takeover of the United States. The time for silence is over. The time for complacency is gone. We cannot allow this republic to crumble under the weight of corruption and indifference. I pray for this message to reach our president, as I know he is still surrounded by snakes. I implore you, my fellow patriots, to rise up, demand accountability, flood the offices of your representatives, the DOJ, the FBI, the White House with your voices. Share our stories of injustice, support those fighting in the courts, stand with us shoulder to shoulder to reclaim our republic." You say, "We are not defeated, we are resilient, and together we can restore the promise of America." Leah, we've made some strides, but there's still so much more. President Trump is taking some action. We hope more is to come. I hear more is to come. But you're asking your fellow Americans to step up to the plate with specific action. You want them to reach out to their representatives, to the DOJ, right? Explain to them in about 1 minute what action every person in our audience can take.
So right now, specifically in Pennsylvania, but all across our nation, there are great patriots who have significant evidence of election fraud, and also the cover-up of the 2020 election obstruction. I could go on, but I really need for people to reach out to our White House at this point. Specifically, I'm asking for the president or his administration, the DOJ, to please focus heavily on Delaware County, Pennsylvania, to raise focus to the cases that I talk about on my X account. We are being completely destroyed by our local government and our state government because, we are being harassed and intimidated and lawfared. And I'm just asking for eyes and focus on Delaware County. I would love for the DOJ to step in and make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone ever again in the United States.
I hope people hear you, Leah. I hope people hear you and rise to the occasion. You certainly have, and for that you have suffered. Thank you, my friend, for everything you do. You're a good patriot, a good American, and I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, Emerald. God bless.
U.S. tech workers and students are asking for a fair shake. Georgetown University professor Anna Gorsuch tweeted this out recently, saying, "I have to be honest, and it hurts, but I think we are losing this one. Too many have convinced themselves that if we just end the H-1B, all Americans will have amazing jobs and there won't be any corruption. Those of us willing to think know what will actually happen. Jobs will go overseas. Companies will build HQs in India." Now, this comes on the heels of a spate of studies and news stories proving that which we've all suspected for many years and were called racist as a result of voicing those suspicions. Not only do programs like the H-1B visa system disproportionately favor foreign workers, but they contribute to the massive unemployment levels amongst our own American workers as well. How many times have you heard wealthy boomers urge their younger counterparts to just pull themselves up by their bootstraps in response to those young people voicing understandable anger over their inability to afford anything in this economy despite working so hard? How many young people put themselves into massive student debt going into STEM-related fields on the promise that they'd find a good paying job after graduation, only to learn these jobs were given to foreign workers who are paid significantly less? Listen.
So here at UD, which is an engineering school, you got a lot of STEM graduates here. They're having a lot of difficulty finding jobs in STEM fields. And it's because of all the competition that is being imported into our country from countries like India and China. And that's a major issue for young people. And Republicans increasingly are not talking about it. I feel like very few in the media have been talking about it, but it's a major issue. We live in a very, very competitive job market. Most like 90%, 90 to 95% of STEM applications sent out by recent graduates at schools like UD are rejected.
It is the most difficult job market for any young American and has a STEM-related degree, not just lovely liberal arts schools. Joining us now is Kevin Lynn of U.S. Tech Workers to explain what's going on and what needs to be done. This came back into focus, Kevin. It's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. After Trump made his statements about, I was just saying it came back into focus after Trump made the statement related to 600,000 Chinese students and visas for them, which he wasn't talking specifically about tech, right? But with everything that our country faces. But there's still a major problem.
Right. It's certainly emblematic of the problem. Probably have to take a step back. And we have this notion that there was a time when there was a STEM worker shortage in America, and the only way it could be solved was by importing workers. Once again, the solution is immigration, and nothing could be further from the truth. For instance, and let me just say this, in a market-based economy, there is no such thing as a long-term labor shortage, because what happens is, as the demand goes up, the wages and the benefits and the job security rise as well. And when it did look like in the 1980s that we might have a STEM worker shortage, what did Americans do? They responded. They went into the high demand jobs. This was the fuel on the fire that created Silicon Valley, the dot-com revolution. So there is no such thing as a long-term labor shortage, but there has always been this persistent desire of businesses to lower wages. For instance, a good friend of mine, a retired scientist who worked at Lawrence Livermore most of his career, he's in his 80s, and when we were talking about creating U.S. tech workers back in 2018, he looked at me and he said, "Kevin, they always thought we were expensive. I'd been trying to get our wages down. But now, Emerald, the problem is at a critical stage. When you look at the current layoffs, for instance, we've had about 10 million layoffs across the boards in 2025 to date. However, for the first time, professional services at 2.1% are the highest sector represented. So something is happening to our in-demand, white-collar, professional workers. And what it is, Emerald, is this. And it goes back to the Immigration Act of 1990 that created the H-1B visa, and then later under the George W. Bush administration, where they created the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math optional practical training program, which was essentially to grant any foreigner who graduated with a STEM degree a 3-year work permit to work here in the United States. And we'll talk about some of the benefits employers get from that. But what it's led to is this. Typically in STEM, Emerald, and this goes back decades, you would see an unemployment rate of 0.9 to about 2.3. Anything higher than that, we're flashing red indicators. Well, right now, the unemployment rate in STEM is 4.2%. Of recent STEM graduates, Emerald, it is So what Gabe was saying earlier is absolutely spot on. And the way this is happening is, as I mentioned, they created the H-1B visa program, which brings in about 120,000 people, foreigners on average, of which 70% come from one country, India. And currently, we have in the United States 659,000 plus H-1B workers. I had mentioned optional practical training. Now, between STEM OPT, straight OPT, curriculum practical training, which is employment for foreign students while they're here in the United States, add another 547,000 workers, Emerald. Now, add to that, we allow spouses of H-1B visa workers to be employed. That's another 150,000. L1, which is simply a transfer program. You might recall the last time we spoke, Emerald, was during the great Christmas H-1B visa kerfuffle. What sparked that was the appointing of this guy, Sriram Krishnan, to the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy. Well, he had come to the country. He was working for Microsoft in India, and through an L1 visa, an intercompany transfer, he came to the U.S. So we have roughly 387,000 of them. And then add to that the seasonal ag workers and seasonal workers who come in to work at resorts. We have roughly 2 million foreigners legally in the U.S. competing directly with Americans, and in particular, professional worker Americans. And then you add to that the 1.2 million that come in through legal immigration channels and get either a family-based green card or an employment-based green card or the diversity lottery. I mean, this is the landmine or the minefield that is the current labor market in America. There's huge challenges. Anyone looking for employment, whether they be white-collar professional with a computer science degree or looking to become a commercial driver. There are huge barriers, and it's all caused by, for the most part, legal immigration. And I'll rest there and let you ask any questions you might have, Emerald.
Well, we're actually running out of time, but I think you've made the case succinctly. I hope President Trump and his team is watching, because there's still this fight internally, right, about legal immigration. And there's always the case made, especially by the tech people that come and dine at the White House, right? Particularly by them.
Right.
Well, we just don't we don't have the talent here. We don't have the talent here, but that's just not true.
It is not true, because there is a thing called an O visa. It's the Einstein visa. And there is no cap to it. You just have to be really, really smart or really talented, demonstrated exceptional work in your field, and you could come in on an O visa. However, it's not highly subscribed to because, well, talent is pretty evenly dispersed throughout the globe. So yes, it's always been about getting wages down. And the proof is in the pudding. Emerald, since 2015 up until 2024, wages in computer science have been stagnant. How is that with all this demand and can't find Americans out there? No, they're simply goosing the supply of labor with foreign workers that are happy to work for less, because they're looking for, and this is why 70% come from one country, India. You're telling me all this talent is located in one country? And they're here because the H-1B visa is a dual intent visa, Emerald. So an employer, if they choose to do so, could sponsor that H-1B worker for a green card, and they essentially have an indentured servant. And that's why these are attractive. H-1B needs to be eliminated. STEM OPT was never legislated into law, and that should be gotten rid of through simple rulemaking.
Yeah, 30 seconds real quick. One more question, because I'm going to get this in. Tariffs, are they helping to improve the job market for American tech workers?
I think tariffs will. Now, tariffs are on manufactured goods. I think we need a tariff on professional services because you had quoted Ann Gorsuch earlier, and she said, oh my God, if we don't bring in the foreign workers to work here, they're just going to outsource those jobs to other low rent countries. Well, this is the thing. The H-1B visa worker serves as the conduit. He does the knowledge transfer between the American that they displace, like they did at Disney, Abbott, Vanguard, so many. And then once that H-1B visa has the knowledge, that's then transferred, outsourced, or rather offshored to another country. And so by halting the H-1B visa program, we will actually force a pullback on outsourcing it, or offshoring itself. And we need some kind of a tariff program that will be used for professional services. If President Trump, he really needs to look at what happened this weekend when Putin, Xi, and Modi got together and had a big love fest. Well, understand, India has never been an ally. Rarely has it been a friend, and we have offshored all of our financial data to them, all of our insurance data, a lot of our government data. They're working here within our federal government, in Wells Fargo, at IBM. All this data is there, and it is not secure. There was a big breach recently with TransUnion, and all these big breaches have one thing in common. Salesforce.com. Salesforce, the CEO, is talking about the India era, Emerald, where they're already so busy moving jobs over to India, and our data is not secure there. And that is aside from the economic implications of these visa programs and the outsourcing and offshoring, there's significant national security. This is it has become an existential threat at this point.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That multilateral meeting with those countries didn't get the attention it warrants as it relates to American interests and national security. And we are going to actually dive into that this week, a little later in the week, Kevin Lynn. So I'm glad you brought that up and gave a little primer to our audience. It's always good to see you. Thanks for jumping in with us. And we'll keep covering this H-1B issue because it is a major one and it must be addressed by the Trump administration. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Emerald. Always great to be on your show. And thank you for what you do every day.
That's it for this hour of The Absolute Truth. I just want to let you know that tomorrow we have some huge exclusive breaking news as it relates to our elections and also HHS. I'll give you that little tease. So be sure to catch me tomorrow at noon Eastern and 8 p.m. Eastern right here on Lindell TV. And that's The Absolute Truth.